before we begin this story that left an entire dojo in stunned silence. If you've ever been judged by your appearance, ever stayed silent until you simply couldn't anymore, hit like, subscribe, and leave a comment. What moment in your life made you stronger? Not everyone would expect a billionaire to spend his summer vacation by enrolling his son in a rundown martial arts dojo in a small California town. But Kwame Ease was no ordinary man. A sleek black Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled up in front of the weathered building on Fremont Avenue, drawing the gaze of everyone nearby. Mothers picking up their children turned their heads. A few boys nudged each other, giggling. The sign above the door, Cliff Martial Arts Academy, trembled slightly in the breeze, its paint peeling, the board hanging crooked as if no one had bothered to fix it in years. The car door opened. A tall black man stepped out, dressed in a crisp, ivory linen suit. A Patek Philippe watch gleamed on his left wrist. He extended a hand to help his son climb down, a 12-year-old boy with soft curls and wide, hesitant eyes. The boy wore a black t-shirt, cargo shorts, and a backpack with a picture of Luffy Gear 5 on it. "You sure about this place?" Kwame asked, his deep voice warm, carrying a refined Nigerian accent with quiet restraint. Kofi nodded, not looking at his father, but instead staring at the martial arts poster taped to the window, a white instructor mid-punch, with bold text underneath. "Discipline, honor, power. I want to learn from the strongest," Kofi said softly. Kwame said nothing. He placed a hand on his son's shoulder and gave it a gentle squeeze. "Strength doesn't come from throwing punches," he said. "It comes from learning how to stand tall when the world wants to see you fall." The dojo door creaked open. The sound of sneakers on the worn wooden floor echoed like footsteps from another time. The air inside was thick with the scent of sweat, liniment, and determination. Kids were practicing kicks, shouting in unison, "Ki." Each strike thudded against the padded walls like a declaration. This is the house of strength. A man in his 50s, lean, with short blonde hair, stepped out from an office at the back. "Master Cliff." His eyes swept past Kofi, then lingered longer on the father. "Can I help you?" he asked, offering a thin smile. "I'd like to enroll my son, Kofi, in the summer martial arts program," Kwame replied. Cliff frowned slightly. "Well, the advanced group is already pretty full. But for a new student, I can make space in the beginner's class." "My son has basic training in judo and karate," Kwame said calmly. Cliff smiled, the kind of smile used by people accustomed to judging others by the surface. "Well, we'll see. Martial arts isn't for everyone." Kofi lowered his head, avoiding eye contact, as if sensing something was already off. Kwame simply smiled. But behind that smile, a sharp instinct tugged at his chest, one he had learned never to ignore. Kofi was handed a white martial arts uniform. It was baggy, the sleeves hanging all the way past his wrists, like it had been pulled from the bottom of a forgotten supply box. The other students wore fitted uniforms, with embroidered names on the chest, and tightly tied belts. Kofi quietly wrapped his white belt around his waist, and said nothing. Kwame sat on a wooden bench in the corner of the waiting room, surrounded by blonde, red-lipped mothers chatting about Pilates, flower arranging, and keto baking. He sat upright. No phone, no laptop, just observing. Every glance, every gesture in that room played out like a slow-motion film, and something about it felt off. Master Cliff stepped into the center of the mat and clapped 3 times. "Today we have a new student, Kofi Ease." He turned to the group standing on the left, all Asian and black kids. "You'll be in the beginner group. These kids will help you get up to speed." "Yes, sir," Kofi replied softly and stepped over without hesitation. To the right stood the advanced group, all white students. A boy named Bradley, blonde hair, bright face, green belt, raised an eyebrow at Kofi and gave a half smirk. "Good luck, rookie." The first drill was evasive movement. Kofi caught on quickly. He moved swiftly, kept solid balance. A few minutes in, when Cliff wasn't looking, he even helped another boy adjust his stance. Then came sparring. Cliff pointed straight at Kofi. "You'll go with Darren." Darren was at least 20 pounds heavier, a yellow belt, and had a reputation for fighting rough. Kofi swallowed hard. I'm not used to sparring with. There's no asking permission in martial arts. Cliff cut him off, stern eyes flashing. Kwame sat up straight. He nearly spoke, but stopped himself. His eyes locked onto his son, his hands clenched tightly on his knees. The command rang out. Darren charged first. The shove sent Kofi stumbling back, barely keeping his balance. He tried to hold his ground, but was thrown to the mat. Again, Cliff said coldly. This time, Darren raised his leg. Not a proper move, not at the correct force, and kicked Kofi straight in the stomach. Kofi doubled over, dropping to his knees. A quiet groan escaped him. Get up, Cliff barked. No one cries here. If you want to be a fighter, learn to take it. Otherwise, go home. The room fell silent. A few parents averted their gaze from Kwame. Kofi rose slowly. His lips pressed into a thin line, eyes red but dry. He bowed his head. I'm sorry. Kwame leaned back against the bench, sighing deeply. Not because his son was weak, but because in this place, martial arts wasn't being taught to make kids stronger. It was being used to make sure they knew who didn't belong. And just like that, a young boy's dream of martial arts began to crack, one piece at a time. That afternoon, the dojo felt unusually cold. The air hung thick with a certain kind of silence, the kind people use to bury injustice happening right in front of them, too afraid to speak up. Kofi said nothing on a ride home. Sitting in the passenger seat, he curled forward, arms around his stomach. Sweat glistened on his forehead, his lips pressed tightly together. Kwame didn't speak either, but he didn't take his eyes off his son for even a second. In his mind, the entire scene from the dojo replayed in slow motion. The misdirected kick, the harsh words, Cliff's icy glare, the smirks from Bradley. The car rolled to a stop in front of their secluded mansion, hidden behind rows of olive trees. Inside the oak-paneled living room, Kwame knelt down and gently pressed a warm cloth to the bruise on his son's stomach. I don't want to go back there, Kofi whispered. Kwame looked deep into his son's eyes, the eyes of a child who had just understood, for the first time, what injustice felt like. You know, he said in a low, steady voice, when I was your age, a coach once told me, with your skin color, you'll never have a shot in judo. Kofi looked up. What he didn't know, Kwame continued, was that I had already taken down the national champion, before the man even knew my name. What happened after that? Kofi asked, his voice trembling. Kwame smiled, but it was a bitter smile. I quit judo that very day, not because I lost, but because I couldn't stand the feeling of winning and still being treated like I didn't belong. Silence hung between them for a long moment. Then Kofi whispered, almost inaudibly, so what do I do now? Kwame stood up, gazing out the window, the sunset spilling golden light over the backyard lawn. He didn't answer right away, because he knew that answer couldn't be spoken. It had to be shown. That night, after Kofi had fallen asleep, Kwame entered the memory room. He unlocked a small steel cabinet and pulled out an old leather bag, thick with dust. He unzipped it. Inside, a jet-black GI, a worn red belt with frayed edges, and a faded tournament badge that read, Kwame Ease, Black Eagle. He picked up the belt and gripped it tightly. His eyes sharpened, no longer the gaze of CEO, but of a warrior awakened from a long, silent slumber. Tomorrow, he wouldn't walk into that dojo as a father. He would return as a legend, to deliver a lesson someone there should have learned long, long ago. The next morning, the California sky turned a quiet shade of gray. No rain, but something in the air made the kids at the dojo more hesitant than usual. The sleek black SUV wasn't parked along the curb like the day before. Today, Kwame walked Kofi in on foot. No driver, no tailored suit. He wore a dark sweatshirt, black Adidas track pants, and a low-brim cap, blending in like any other father. But his eyes, sharp as steel, and not hiding a thing. Cliff looked mildly surprised to see them return. He gave a dismissive nod. Didn't think you'd show up today. Kwame replied gently, we don't quit halfway. My son will finish what he started. Cliff shrugged. His eyes weren't indifferent this time. They were cautious. There was something in the way this black man stood, The way he silently walked through the dojo, the way his gaze scanned every corner, that made the room feel strangely tense. Class began. Kofi was placed at the end of the line. No one wanted to pair with him for drills. When his name was called, he just nodded, stepped onto the mat, and said nothing. Bradley, the star of the advanced group, nudged Darren and smirked. Saturday's test is going to be fun. Cliff heard it, said nothing. Toward the end of class, Cliff clapped his hands. This Saturday, we'll be holding a demonstration. Parents will have the chance to witness their children's progress. As usual, I'll perform the exhibition match. Then he turned, his gaze slicing toward Kwame like a blade. If any parent here is curious to see the difference between martial arts and business suits, I'm open to a friendly demonstration. The dojo froze. One student chuckled. A parent whispered, "He's trying to humiliate the billionaire dad." Kwame didn't flinch. He stood, stepped onto the mat, and locked eyes with Cliff, like a blade pressed against glass. "Very well," he said. "I accept." No laughter, no murmurs. Cliff blinked, slightly thrown off, but quickly recovered his arrogant tone. "You sure? This isn't the World Economic Forum, Mr. Ease." Kwame simply replied, "I've fought on colder floors than this wooden one." Cliff waved him off. "Saturday, in front of everyone. I'll prove that not just anyone can wear a GI." Kwame nodded once, then turned, took Kofi's hand, and walked out. Saturday, 4 p.m. Cliff's dojo was packed. Parents filled the 2 rows of chairs lining the mat, phones raised, ready to record. Kids in white GIs ran around, giggling and restless. On the back wall, the red-painted words, "Honor, Strength, Tradition," looked like they were starting to flinch from the weight of what was coming. In the center of the mat, Master Cliff stood tall in a black training GI, holding a belt in one hand. "Thank you all for coming to our annual demonstration," he announced. "And today, we have a special event, a friendly match between myself and a parent." There was a murmur through the crowd. A mother laughed. "Do we really need to watch this? We already know who's going to win." Kwame stepped out from the corner of the room. No suit, no dress shoes. He wore a pure black GI, moving as silently as shadow. There was nothing on his shoulders but an unsettling calm. No one recognized him. No one had seen him before like this. But somewhere in the room, the air began to shift. Kofi sat in the front row, hands clenched tightly together, eyes fixed and unblinking. Cliff chuckled and bowed with mocking flair. "I'll go easy. Don't worry." Kwame simply bowed back, slow, deep, and filled with quiet respect. A few polite claps scattered across the room as Cliff stepped into the center, taking his stance, wide-legged, hands poised to strike. Kwame remained upright, arms relaxed at his sides. "Begin," the referee called. Cliff launched forward like a bullet. A wide-spinning roundhouse aimed straight at Kwame's shoulder, flashy, for show. Kwame tilted his body, as light as a leaf. The kick swept past, missing by inches. The room went silent. Cliff instantly shifted, spinning into a second kick, this time lower, toward the ribs. Kwame stepped back a single stride. His heel barely kissed the mat. Another miss. A student near the back whispered, "He's dodging everything," without even taking a stance. Cliff started to look annoyed. He lunged forward with a flurry of punches, fast, hard, precise, but each one met nothing but air. Kwame shifted only slightly, inch by inch. Every time, just enough. His eyes never left Cliff's. He didn't blink once. The dojo was dead silent. "Tricks," Cliff hissed, finally sounding frustrated. He spun into his signature move, a spinning back kick he'd used in demos across the state. Kwame didn't flinch. As Cliff's leg came around, Kwame moved, as if he already knew the kick was coming. He gently reached out, didn't block, didn't strike, just tapped Cliff's ankle at the exact moment he lost balance. Thud! Cliff spun, stumbled, and crashed onto the mat in front of every student, every parent. No one said a word. The air felt vacuum-sealed. A mother stood up suddenly. "What just happened?" Kwame stood still. No grin, no arrogance. He extended his hand. Get up. This match wasn't meant to humiliate you. It was meant to remind you that wearing a GI isn't just for the white and privileged. Cliff looked up at him, eyes wide with disbelief, unable to process what had just happened. From the front row, a young student of color shouted, "I know who he is. He's Black Eagle, 3-time African judo champion. He's on YouTube." Everyone turned to their phones. The name Kwame lit up their screens. Videos, headlines, championships, the stare, the stance, the style, unmistakable. The dojo exploded, not with noise, but with shock. Cliff sat frozen, breathless. No one was laughing now. No one was doubting. A man who had been looked down on had just turned that very mat into a masterclass in silence, power, and justice. After that day's demonstration, no one looked at Cliff's dojo the same way again. Master Cliff canceled all classes the following week. He returned the next Monday. No black sparring armor, no loud commands. During the opening session, he stood before the students and parents, bowed his head, and said, "I apologize for letting pride and prejudice blind me." No one clapped. But for the first time, that silence was filled with respect. Cliff began to change. Students of color were reassigned based on skill, not skin. Belt advancement tests were now supervised by independent judges. And the parents who once sat in silence now spoke up whenever they sensed something unjust. Kofi, now more confident, was invited to assist in the beginner class and was called senpai by the very students who used to mock him. Kwame, he never returned to the dojo. He didn't need to. The victory wasn't on the mat. It was in seeing his son now hold his head high without needing his father to shield him. At the end of summer, Kofi tested for his yellow belt. During a short speech, he said, "Martial arts taught me how to fall and get back up, but my father taught me how to stand without ever throwing a punch." And in the back row, Kwame nodded, eyes glistening in the afternoon light. Hands that were once weapons, now simply a safe place for a boy who had once been seen as weak. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe if you believe. Justice doesn't have to shout. It just has to show up.